Hello everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be canning up some elk meat. First thing I do is I get it all cut up and ready for canning, and then I season it. When you're canning, you want to do, I'm doing 8-ounce jars, so you want to do at least an 1/8 teaspoon of salt per jar. The reason you want to do this is because salt is a preservative and it's going to help preserve the jars and make them last longer. I do a little bit more just because I like the extra salt, but I don't do too much. So basically, I weigh my meat up. I've got about 7.5 pounds here. So it's about an 1/8 teaspoon per half pound. Gives you a 1/4 teaspoon per pound. For 1 teaspoon per 4 pounds. There's 7.5 here, so I went ahead and put 2 teaspoons in it. And then I also added 2 teaspoons of black pepper, mixed it all up, and it's been sitting in the fridge for the last 24 hours. First step is to get your jars nice and clean, and then you're going to put them in a pressure cooker, big pan, whatever you have that they'll fit in, and boil them for 10 minutes to sterilize them. Okay, next step is to carefully empty out the jars and let them cool and dry. One of these is definitely helpful. They sell an entire canning kit. Comes with this, and this. This is for the lids. That's for the jars. That's for packing them. That's for filling them without getting the edge all nasty. So we're just gonna continue on. Be careful because they are hot. But we're gonna get these all out of here and cooling and drying. After they've cooled for 5-10 minutes, but before they completely cool off, you want to go ahead and flip them over. You can see the little bit of steam that's coming out of them. That's going to let that last little bit of moisture escape. Because if you don't flip them over, when they completely cool, there'll be moisture condensed on the inside of them. Try to avoid touching the top if possible. And you could let them cool down a little more than what I did. Might be smart, but there we go. Now that we've got our jars all cooled down, we are ready to start filling them. In the meantime, get you a pan with some water in it and bring it just to a boil while you're filling up these jars. Alright. Most of the time I just use my hands for this, but I've found the tongs help pack it in there. I'm going to see if I can get us some better light. There we go, that's a little better. And you want to fill these just to the bottom of this green thing, and that gives you the perfect amount of headspace. And we're going to fill these one by one. It typically takes just under a half a pound to fill an 8-ounce jar, which an 8-ounce jar is 8 ounces is a half a pound, so it makes sense. And so, being just under a half a pound per jar, you can weigh it up. I've got 7.5 pounds, so that would be 14 jars, plus I'm going to have a little extra from each jar, so I'm guesstimating this is going to take 15 to 16 jars. But I went ahead and sterilized 21 of them, I think there's there. Just to be on the safe side. Because I'd rather have more than enough than have to stop what I'm doing and try and sterilize more jars. So I'm going to continue to fill these. Our pan of water has come to a boil. So we're going to take it off the heat and set it right back here. And I'll show you what to do with that when we get done filling these jars. Two things I almost forgot to mention. One is that when you're doing this, you're trying to push all the air out from underneath it. You want as minimal voids as possible. Secondly, when you're cutting up your meat, don't try and cut it all the same. Cut it into random sizes and pieces. One, it'll give you a better texture inside your jar. Two, it'll give you smaller pieces to help get it full without overfilling it. Alright, now that I mentioned that, I'm going to continue on. So I got down to my last little bit and I decided to add some fresh jalapeno, garlic, and onion in there. And I'm going to mix that up. This is my first time trying this, but I've added jalapeno and garlic to tuna fish before, but I've never tried it with red meat. So I'm going to get this mixed up and I'm going to fill up our last few jars with this. And hopefully it turns out delicious. And also, because it's my last few jars, I'm not going to fill them completely full. That way I can either end up with an extra short jar, or I can go back and top them off so that I'm not trying to pull a little bit out because I've only got half a jar. I can get equal jars if I don't completely fill them up all the way. Okay, we ended up with 20 jars. Now that we know we have 20 jars, we're going to pull out 20 brand new lids. There's 10. And we're going to throw those in our hot water. And we're going to let those sit for a minute. That's going to help soften up that rubber, and that's going to give you a better seat on the jars. In the meantime, we're going to grab a nice clean towel and some really hot water. We're going to saturate our towel in the hot water. We're going to take each jar and go around the outside of it, just like so. Once you do this, you really want to try not to touch the top of that. And I'll do a couple jars. I'll find this clean spot on the towel. Alright, I'm going to finish this up and we'll be back for the next step. Okay, we've got them all wiped down. Our lid should have had just enough time to soften up. So now we're going to take these and place them on top. While I'm at this, I should mention I'm canning this raw, which is okay, but after you can it, it's still red. And some people don't like the red color. They feel like it's not cooked. But, I mean, when it boils in the canner for an hour and 40 minutes at 11 pounds of pressure, how could it not be cooked? But if you find the red color unappealing, you can brown the meat first. Also, if you do brown the meat first, while browning it, you can add flour to it. By adding flour to it, after it's done canning, you pull it out, you throw it in a frying pan, you warm it up, you add a little bit of water to it, and you have gravy. You have a nice meat gravy. Quick and easy. I personally have never tried that, but I have heard of it. I don't mind the red color, and I like the flavor that it comes out when it's raw, so I don't cook it. Even when I do tuna, I don't cook it first. I don't know anybody who does cook it first, even though it says to cook it first. I can all my meat, fish, red meat, white meat, chicken, pork, beef, everything. I can it all the exact same way. Now you gotta take your rings that you should have washed, clean, dried, ready to go. And I take them and I tighten them, loosen them about 3 times and just snug them up. You don't want them over tight. And that helps to set that. Alright, I'll finish that up and be right back. And just show you guys something else. That, a little tarnished, threads still look okay. That's okay. This will probably be its last use. That's trash. Threads are starting to rust. So, don't use that one. But that one is still okay for one more use. Alright, now that we have our lids on, making sure we have our plate in the bottom, we're going to start with cold water. I've dumped all the hot water that was in this out from sterilizing the jars. Starting completely over with cold water. You're going to do 3 quarts of water, or if like mine, yours has a line, it'll be the first line down on the bottom. I've actually used mine enough that it now has a ring in it. It tells me where to fill it up, but it's also got a line. Okay, we're up to our first line. I've got 20 jars. I can fit 14 in the bottom of this and 14 in the top for a total of 28. But why overcrowd it if I don't have to? So I'm just going to even them out. I'm going to put 10 jars on the bottom and I'll put 10 jars on the top. Anytime you're doing 2 layers, you should have a divider. Mine didn't come with the divider. I just cut this out of a piece of aluminum and drilled some holes in it. What that does is that keeps your jars from sitting on top of your other one like this and not letting it pressurize like it's supposed to. Or with it sitting like this, it can rock and sometimes actually crack the jars. And even though I have them on that tray, I still try and set them on the tray to where they're like this to help even out, equalize the pressure. Alright, I'm going to finish this up and be right back. Canner's all loaded up. Got the pressure gauge on the top. Lid goes on. Burner on high. We have a pressure rocker right here. It'll go right there, but for right now, that stays off. We've got a little regulator valve right here. It's actually an indicator. We're going to put this on high. It's going to steam out of here, and we're going to let that go until this little thing rattles and pops up. Once this pops up, we can put the cap on and bring our pressure up. Also, what this does is it helps everything in here equalize and get to the same temperature. That's why you start completely cold. Jars were cold, full of cold meat. Start with cold water. As the water warms up, it'll warm the jars and meat up to where everything's at an equal temperature. What that helps do is if sooner you can regulate the temperature, the less messing with the temperature knob on the stove you have to do. So I do that every time, and I don't have to chase this thing up and down near as much as if I were to just put the cap on it and let it start going. Having said that, we will be back shortly. Little indicators dancing around, about to pop up, and there it goes. All right, now we can put that on there and wait for our temperature to start coming up. We want 11 pounds, which is that dash right above the 10. And we want to try and keep it up at or above, closest to, not below 11 pounds for 100 minutes, which is an hour and 40 minutes. So we're going to let this temperature start coming up. As this starts coming up, once it gets to 10, I drop it down to about 3/4. As it hits 11, I drop it down to about half. And then keep an eye on it, trying to make sure if the temperature starts dropping, I turn it up. If the temperature keeps rising, I turn it down a little. Okay, we're just coming over 10 pounds. I dropped it down to about 3/4 on the burner. I'm gonna let this come right up to the middle of that dash, and I'm gonna drop it to half, and then keep an eye on it to know whether I need to go up or down from there. We're right at midway on the line. I drop the temperature down to medium, exactly medium. And we're going to set the timer for 100 minutes, which is 1 hour and 40 minutes. And you don't want it to drop down below that line, that dash. Otherwise, what they say, you got to start all over. So right now we're staying right in the middle of it. So far so good, but we'll keep an eye on it. And right now is where the babysitting begins. I do not let this thing go more than 10 minutes without coming and checking on it. Usually it creeps up in temperature, not down. So you can see right now that needle's dropping. So I'm going to come back up to 5. So just a little bit over medium. And so far, we're holding steady. So, all right, I'm gonna babysit this all the way through. We'll see you guys in an hour and 40 minutes. All right, timer has went off. We're gonna turn off the timer, turn off the burner, and let that sit until that is at 0 and that is down. Do not take that off. Do not try and open it until both that is at 0 and that thing is down. This is under a lot of pressure, and if you try and open that, it will be very dangerous. Alrighty, we'll be back as soon as that's done. Alright, as you can see, we are down to 0. That is in. And we can take that off. We know for sure there's no pressure. Open it up away from you. Otherwise, you'll get that steam right in your face. And let's see what these look like. Oh man, look at that. There's one of the ones with the onions and jalapenos and stuff in it. You can hear them popping already. There's another one, onion and jalapeno. So those off to the side. There's a regular one. Oh man, looks delicious. So now we're gonna let them cool. And what you're looking for, this one's already done it. You're looking for that seal to go down. Hear those all pop and closed? That's what you want. Let them cool down for a few hours, or if it's 12 o'clock in the morning like it is right now, let them cool down overnight and check them and see if all the buttons are down. You can see on this one, if I can get it at the right angle, there we go, the button is up on it. So when that cools down, it should suck the button down. After a few hours, if that button's not sucked down, oh, there it just went. Then you need to refrigerate it, and it's good in the refrigerator for a couple of days. So, I think that's about all there is to tell you. I hope you go get yourself a canner and give this a try. Oh, also, I can all my meat the same way. I can beef, chicken, pork, venison. This is my first time doing elk, but it's no different than venison. I can steelhead, I can tuna fish, and I do it all the same. I put it in raw. I go 100 minutes or an hour and 40 minutes at 11 pounds of pressure. I've been doing it for years now with no issues. There we go. All our jars are out. So far, most of the buttons are already sucked down. Everything's looking good. So, follow the instructions. I hope I made them pretty simple for you to understand. Get yourself a canner if you don't have one, and give it a try. I will date these for today's date that they were canned when they come out of the canner. And, I mean, as long as it's not swollen or moldy, it's good. They can last 10, 15, 20 years up to, as long as you keep them in a cool, dry place and they don't mold or swell. Thank you all for watching. You guys are great. I appreciate you. And go get your grub on. Alrighty, we are creeping right up onto 10 pounds. I'm going to turn this down. Ouch. Don't touch anything, it's hot.